projecting their own fears of what the unconscious contains onto everyone else. And when you grow up in a family, particularly that never discusses dreams and doesn't discuss the reasons people do, they call it psychologizing and dismiss it out of hand, then you're unfamiliar with the workings of the human psyche. And then it becomes a fearful thing. So that when people hear, those kinds of people hear about somebody taking a drug that opens up the unconscious, they think immediately of axe murderer. You know, that all of us have a potential axe murderer down deep inside. And there is a great fear that may emerge, and that you'll have no control over it. In fact, I would suspect that everybody before their first psychedelic experience has a fear of that kind, either the murderer or the beast, which is the shadow part of ourselves. And how am I going to retain control over something like that if it takes me over? I don't know any of us who haven't had thoughts along that line. And I think very gradually, with more publications and with more research, like the Johns Hopkins one that was just published, very gradually people are going to think, well, maybe we can take more of a look at these things. Maybe they aren't so very dangerous, or, you know, if we use them the right way, etc. It's going to take a long time. But I think it'll happen, and I think human beings are just as capable of doing this kind of inner work and seeking out the answers as they ever were.
I was curious about, with more people using ethnogenic and psychedelic substances that are traditionally used in a ceremonial setting or with a ceremonial setting, what your feelings are about them being used without that, or the role of ceremony.
You mean without ritual or a ceremony?
Correct.
Do you want to answer that? It's interesting. Somebody talked about that yesterday. In my own experience, everybody who uses a psychedelic drug with other people will sort of intuitively says certain words before they embark. It's usually something like blessings on our journey. But that comes naturally. I believe that if you want to do a classic Native American ceremony, that's wonderful. I think that's good. But it's not necessary for a good experience. It's just it just makes you feel better, and the small ritual like blessings on our journey does the same thing. There is no danger in not having ritual. It just eases the soul a little bit when you're embarking into something that's unknown.
I'd like to thank you on behalf of everybody here for changing our lives one way or another, indirectly or directly. My question is really quick. It's just kind of a factual question. I've had a couple phenethylamines for about a year and a half, 2 CT7, 2 CP, and 2 CT21, and I was wondering what their shelf life was like, whether they were still safe to eat or they've been around too long.
In general, sulfur compounds have an intrinsic instability, but many of these compounds are quite sensitive to hydrolysis or to change. I think the general rule would be to keep things dry, keep things out of light, and keep things cold. Refrigerated or in the freezer, refrigerated, but don't let moisture get in and don't let light get in. And I think the shelf life should be indefinite. I see no reason there would be a decomposition, unless the material is, say, intrinsically unstable. but then that speaks against its being used at all, because you don't know what you're getting. No, I think the stability is intrinsically the way it is there if you store it in ways it is not exposed to air or to light or to heat.
Thank you very much.
Good. Oh.
I want to add something. It's very nice for us to be thanked a lot, but we didn't change your life. You made the decision to use certain things and to learn from them.
As a couple in a psychedelic path, what advice or knowledge or wisdom would you give to other couples embarking on the same journey, and what substances would you recommend for a couple like MDMA, LSD, or 2CB or whatnot?
Well, people who are having trouble in their relationships and maybe before they get married or after they get married, the MDMA has always been the magical thing that allowed them to open up and get those initial love feelings back. Otherwise, I don't think you can give advice except respect each other and take care of each other. That's all.
This brings up one point I think should be emphasized here. When other people are considering an experience, I think one of the risks that has to be thought through and followed with care is things like LSD and MDMA and 2CB are felonies to possess and to use. So you must reinforce the fact that these materials are illegal and that you cannot brag about it or run around downtown, down the sidewalk, screaming, hey, LSD really is a neat thing to try. That precaution cannot be underemphasized. Another point in, pardon? Cannot be overemphasized. Right. Another thing that has to be kept in mind is that studies have been made, for example, on how much MDMA is in an MDMA tablet. And sometimes there is none. These materials, since they are illegal, are put together under mysterious circumstances, and they can put any label on anything they wish, from caffeine to, who knows, phenobarb, and call it ecstasy. So you have this as an added problem. You have no way of identifying what it is, not easily, what it is you're taking. If you take it into a company that does work with GCMS and can tell you what it is, they are also obliged to inform the authorities that they have been given a Schedule I drug for analysis. So this cannot be casually done. This, I think, is one of the strongest arguments for legalization, is to put these materials where they can be obtained, say through a pharmacy or through some form of a legal arrangement that allows their purity to be established, and even more so their identity to be verified.
My question is about MDMA and harm reduction. There is some controversy about neurotoxicity and possible prevention of that by SSRIs. I was wondering whether you thought that was scientifically valid, and if so, whether there were certain drugs that were better than others for this purpose.
Well, I can address the neurotoxicity fairly straightforward. Most of the work has been done in animals and with monstrous overdoses. And indeed, there are damages that can be shown. There is no really consistent evidence of neurotoxicity in human that I'm aware of. There are accidents, there are things that can occur. I was reading a paper not long ago in Nature, no, it was in some British pharmacological magazine, in which it talked about the human dangers of MDMA, and the only place the MDMA was used in the paper was in the abstract and in the title. In the paper, they're talking about MDA, but obviously you don't get published as readily if you talk about something that's not as notoriously popular as MDMA, so they put the one word in the title and the other chemical as what they were looking at. And one of the damages that came was a series of was a broken bone. And it turned out the person had stumbled at the top of a staircase